Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Modern Overman. Okay, so for today's video, I'm sure you'll see by the headline and by the thumbnail, I'm not trying to be super clickbaity, but I do want to talk about something that concerns me with Hunt. I mean, it's multiple things, but since we're moving into 2025, and clearly there's been a little bit of I don't want to say an upset in the community or upset with Crytek or anything like that, but with them losing 15% of their staff, and basically, I don't want to say canceling Crisis 4, but, putting Crisis 4 on ice until they can get other things sorted out. And the way that Hunt has been rolling out events so frequently for, quite a while now, at least since 2020. They've been putting out events probably every couple of months, with occasionally small breaks in between. Right now we're on a bit of a break, but it's, probably relatively soon until we get a new event. Although I do think that we're going to be getting update 2.3, possibly without an event. Again, they haven't said, but it is going to be dropping, a few meta changes and, little things that we can talk about here and there. But I do want to just, point out that this is going to be an opinion video, that you of course don't have to agree with me, and I would love to see what you guys think down in the comments below. Just for some background, I've been playing since 2020. I started, I believe when the game came out on PlayStation, it was either, I can't remember exactly when. I think it dropped in 2019 on PlayStation, but I'm guessing it was more early 2020. I started playing probably in the summer or fall of that year, just because I picked this up and I was terrible at it. I hadn't played first-person shooters in quite a long time. I'd been used to playing Souls-likes and a few other games like that before, more action-adventure stuff. And so I took some time to try and get good with some other shooters before delving deeper into Hunt Showdown. So I have been playing for quite a long time. I've got about 3,500 hours in the game. Nothing like all those crazy PC vets who have been, playing since 2018, in early access. Nowhere close to that 10,000 hour mark by any imagination. But 3,500 hours, I would say, gives me at least a little bit of experience to know the changes and how they've affected the game since then. And I guess just to put that time frame into context here, is that I've been playing since a little bit before they changed quick swapping, and before certainly they added custom ammo. So the first thing I want to talk about is Hunt's initial appeal to get people into the game. For some context, I got into it largely, believe it or not, because I thought it resembled the From Software game Bloodborne on PS4 quite a bit. When I initially had seen the first sort of clips and images of Hunt Showdown, I was like, wow, it's kind of like this 19th century horror style game, and it had some, I would say fantastical elements, like not just zombies, but like the stuff going on with the monsters and some of the weapons, especially the bomb lance. Believe it or not, like I don't ever really use the bomb lance anymore. I can't remember the last time I used it. But that sort of aesthetic really appealed to me because it had sort of that grimy darkness that was very similar to Bloodborne, and I absolutely love Bloodborne. I'm still a huge fan of the Souls-likes and games that From Software makes, and especially Bloodborne. Probably never coming to PS5, we'll see. But yeah, that was my initial appeal. I was into shooters a long time ago, especially Half-Life and Doom and all those games, but I never really, got that back into first-person shooter games until it was Hunt. And what initially, this sort of what extra drew me into it was its sort of hardcore part to it. Like it was, supposedly very similar to Escape from Tarkov, with a permanent death system, and needing to get in and get out, and having it be, I don't want to say stealth elements per se, although we'll get into that a little bit later. It had those sort of like, you need to almost like play cautiously, and it was dangerous, and other players, you know, pose a significant threat to you, and the monsters were dangerous, and the bosses especially were this other large threat. And in fact, I mean, if you go back on my channel, look at one of my very first videos when I go and fight the Butcher. If you look at the way that I'm playing, I mean, I'm playing panicked. It was like very stressful and intense. And so, yeah, that was the initial draw to it. And I think, you know, a lot of people's initial draw to the game were something similar, right? Where it's just like, this is kind of a hardcore shooter, you know, but it's got this sort of 19th century aesthetic that sets it apart from other games. And that was it. It was hardcore, right? You know, and I don't want to be one of those guys who's like, oh, I only play hardcore, hard games and all that sort of stuff. But again, that was the appeal. You know, it was something that like, okay, this is less casual. It's gonna be more intense, and that's fun, right? That's something that could be fun, that a lot of other games don't have, that we're catering more towards, again, more casual players. Yeah, and so part of why I bring that up is to look at the current state of the game now. Not to say that Hunt still doesn't have hardcore elements. I mean, you look at some of the 6-star lobbies that I play in, and then even more so players with even more experience in how sweaty they play. The game can be hardcore. It can be intense. It can certainly be sweaty, and those experienced players are really hard to go against. But as any veteran player knows, the actual PvE part of the game is not the appeal anymore. It's certainly not what the hardcore element comes from, and there's nothing really that intense about it. If anything, it's more annoying. That's why so many people have flocked to Bounty Clash more than Bounty Hunt, is because there's very, very, very little PvE, and when it is there, it's just like, what the fuck is this doing in Bounty Clash? Why is there an immolator at the extract? Why are there dogs here? Why are there 50 grunts on the way to trying to banish the boss? You know, it's that sort of issue. But I will say that Crytek, in the appeal to more players, they have tried to, I don't want to say add more casual elements, although I think that's part of it. They have tried to ease the more hardcore elements to the game. And, you know, the example is, you know, adding Necromancer, right, from being able to resurrect people from further away. It's Red Skull revives, you know, it used to just be infinite, you know, as long as you had a bounty token, you know, you could just keep doing it. Now it's, you know, it's different now. You can, you know, you have to burn your health bars when you're Red Skull reviving, and as of now, Necromancer is only a one-time use. It's a scarce trait, which is good, but it used to be abused quite frequently. And then, you know, you have other elements too, like all of the events just adding, you know, easier ways to get your bars back, more and more ways to get your bars back, you know, instead of going and banishing the boss. And then just the amount of weapons that are more spammy and easy to use. You know, they added dual wielding, they added custom ammo, which we'll get into a little bit later. And I do think that overall, the game has never been easier to get into. You know, a lot of new players still think it's a bit of a hardcore game, bit of a stealth game, but really it's never been easier to get into. It's so easy to play. The way that matchmaking works, I mean, you know, unless you're, like, again, really sweating, you're not really getting put into particularly challenging matches, especially, I mean, I'm not. I mean, sometimes I certainly am, but a lot of times it's like, dude, like, I kind of wish we had some harder lobbies here. But yeah, I think it's easier than ever to get into the game, and I would say just ask some of the veteran players what they think about that, and they'll tell you. I'm 99% sure that it's never been easier to get into the game. And if you just ask new players as well, you know, the game was recently added to Game Pass on Xbox, and you know, you have players, I'm sure they're like, oh, this is not nearly as hardcore as I thought it was, and they take some of the more casual elements and they're going in there just to have fun, which is great. I mean, you should be having fun in this game. You know, you should never just treat it as like, oh, this is just a stressful part of my life that I get into every week. No, you should be able to be having fun. So the next thing I want to get into a little bit deeper here is the current meta and what it has been in the past and what it's gone to before. Um, Briefly, before custom ammo was added, really, veteran players will tell you that the meta really was long ammo, right? Obviously, you have exceptions like people using nitros and dolces and people using bomb lances every once in a while to go in and do some meme stuff. But really the meta, if you really wanted to sweat and put in the work, you were doing long ammo, either using the Lebel or certainly the Mosin. I mean, that's was the most common weapon to use, and it's still by any standard metric, it is the most common sweat weapon, I would say. Now just Mosin sniper, but really it was long ammo, and I think that because newer players and other more casual players, again, this is not a diss on them, I'm just stating the facts here, is that those type of players were getting sick of being shat on by long ammo users, because they didn't have enough money, and all the, sweaty players had plenty of money to buy all the long ammo Mosins that they wanted. And so Crytek added custom ammo in order to, let's say, level the playing field, make it a little bit more even for everybody. Adding FMJ to a bunch of weapons in order for better penetration, adding for, poison and bleed rounds on certain guns to just add that more of an edge, instead of people who are just like using skill and shooting somebody and trying to just rely on actually hitting your shots. I mean, that's really what it has been for a long time, and it still is. But custom ammo has really completely changed the game. Obviously it's been like this for a while, and any new players should know that we've had custom ammo for quite a while. I would say at least since 2021, but somebody can correct me down in the comments below. But yeah, custom ammo has been part of it for quite a long time, and so we see that the meta has changed quite drastically. And in fact, I used to take the uppercut as my secondary all the time, but they've nerfed the uppercut to all hell. I mean, it's no longer, I would say that it used to be the best sidearm in the game, but they've completely nerfed it down to the ground. Long ammo doesn't nearly have the penetration that it used to, which is really sad. And on top of that, they just are no longer effective, but there are so many other ways, because of custom ammo and because of other weapon changes. There have been so many other changes added to weapons in the game and new, more spammier weapons that, frankly, you still see long ammo, of course, but it's just not nearly the same. And I feel like ever since they've added custom ammo, they've really fucked with long ammo weapons quite a bit. And especially adding like Spitzer rounds, for example, on like the Lebel and the Mosin, it's kind of like, Jesus Christ, like you already had like these crazy super good weapons, and now you're giving them even a flatter trajectory. With bullet drop, of course, that wasn't a thing for a long time, but they are deadly accurate at really far distances, and it's just like, Jesus Christ, they were already super accurate then, and yet you still have all these other elements added in. It just felt weird when custom ammo was added, and it's never really felt the same since. In addition to that, again, people just using all sorts of weird meme builds, when they added the baseball bat and the katana. Obviously you had, melee weapons like the bomb lance and the cavalry saber, but it's just felt weird. And I get it, like, you add all these options for people to have varying different play styles, but it really came at the sacrifice of nerfing long ammo. And I'm going to be one of those people to defend long ammo, because I think that it should have just stayed where it was. They haven't needed to nerf it down to the ground. And, frankly, buffing all those weapons, I mean, the fact is that long ammo was the best for a reason, right? If you were making your money and you were getting good at the game, you're like, okay, I can reward myself and get better and use these better weapons. And now it kind of feels like that every playstyle is viable. And while that's okay, I do feel like it takes away from the heart of what made those better weapons unique. Everybody went after the Prestige 100 reward, the Mosin Centenary skin, right? Because it's like, oh my god, dude, like this is the peak of the game, best Mosin, skin and the best weapon in the game, that sort of thing. And people don't really do that anymore. So why don't we move on to our next topic? So I want to talk about player style and player choice in the sort of vast differences that in how people play, and this comes in a couple of forms here. The classic sort of dichotomy is how people either will camp inside of boss layers or in bushes, or people sniping from really far away, right? It's the classic, like, I've got a shotgun and the bounty and I don't want to move because there's somebody out there sniping, and the sniper doesn't want to move because people are camping inside, and he doesn't want to push because he can't fight shotguns, and so he's going to wait for them to come out, and then therefore we get stalemates. And what that sort of leads to is a passive playstyle, right? You have people who are not wanting to move and they just kind of sit around. And the irony is that Crytek realized this quite a long time ago, and they're like, okay, well, this is clearly an issue, so why don't we add traps to the game so that when people push in, they're able to set up ambushes and do all this other shit, and that ended up bunkering people down in further. And then they also added the beetle, right? It was like, oh, we're going to be adding an anti-camping mechanic. And so is what that did. It just gave people a drone, right, to use and in order for people to get free information around their area, and just allows them to not move, at all. Right? Like, why move when I've got free information that I can take with me into my next game or into the current game rather, and just kind of hunker down in, and especially since the beetles themselves, they have all these various different effects. You've got your choke beetle, your standard stalker beetle that does poison and bleed, which is ridiculous, right? It's a death trap in a drone. And then you've got your fire beetle, which, if you don't have a filthy health bar, like, you are losing your health bar if somebody sets you on fire with that. Like, just, it's gone. Even I don't even think salve skin will save you if you have if a fire beetle hits you with that. It's ridiculous, and you have a small bar. So there's those elements that, again, allow people to play more passively. And then in addition to that, I mean, it's just people, again, playing it like they're scared, right? Sometimes playing it more like a stealth game. I understand that Hunt has stealth elements, right? It's got super quiet weapons, right? Like the crossbow and, some of the silent weapons, even before they added the Mater sniper silencer. So it's got those elements to it, but people play sometimes like they're scared, or they play super slow, and they'll not really play the objective, like, we'll get into that in our next topic. But people are playing more passively than active. And so something that I have taken with me for quite a while now is that when I get into the game, and again, I play primarily solo, right? So playing in teams is different. When you're playing in a team, you have to communicate differently. You have to, talk about, like, what your goal is, unless you're playing randoms and there's no communication at all. And that's its own problem that we were not going to be going into today. But, like, as a team, you're coordinating for a goal and what you're wanting to do. As a solo, I'm like, okay, very focused. I have to focus on myself and what I'm going to be doing. But the thing is, for a long time, I was able to play whatever weapon that I wanted and play, I don't want to say play however I wanted, but play kind of like what I needed to do, because what I would do is, like, I would go for the objective, which is the boss. I would often be the first person to the boss, kill and banish it, and, if people came and fought me, then I would fight them. But if nobody showed up, then I would leave and extract and get that money, and there were so many times where I didn't fight anybody because people were off doing God knows what. I mean, there were times where I would find the boss, kill it, banish it, and extract, not hear a single thing the entire time, and in the lobby screen, I would go and look at the team details and see that it was full of players. So it kind of makes me wonder, like, what in the hell was going on, and people of similar skill level to myself as well. So I didn't really know what was going on, and I still find that every once in a while. It's not as frequently, because people still go for the boss. They just usually do it a little, that's like the last thing that they do aside from all the other stuff that's going on. And we'll talk again in the next subject about why that possibly is. But I think the biggest bother to me is how people play. And again, I'm not saying that like, oh, nobody owes you a play style. You can, you should be able to play however you want. But the thing is like there is a huge difference between active and passive play style. There's a reason why before I started Precision again that I had over 500,000 hunt dollars, is because I would go after the boss and go after the bounty and extract, and sometimes not getting into fights. And that's frustrating because you want to be able to have a good fight in this game. And I do think that is why Crytek realized that they needed to add something like Bounty Clash, which I'm really glad with. The problem is that I don't see why they're limiting it. I don't see why they're making the changes that they needed to. They should have never had AI to begin with. It was purely about PvP experience, and now they're thinking. They initially said that they were going to reduce the amount of players, and now they reverse that, and now they're just going to reduce the amount of teams. And they're quoting for reasons because of it being too chaotic. But the chaos was why we liked it. We liked playing it that way because it was the pure PvP experience. And they've also limited the time that it was available to play, and now they're scaling it back to where it only being available on the weekends, which, again, it doesn't make sense to me. It should be a permanent mode that is available all the time, and just like Soul Survivor is, the original quick play. And it would be interesting to know, get some metrics on like how people are playing and what, how often people are playing either modes. It would be really interesting to see that, because I guarantee it, the more veteran players, more hours and experience, are probably going to be playing Bounty Clash way more often than any other game mode like Bounty Hunt or Soul Survivor. The problem is that I see is that people play a little bit more passively now in Bounty Clash than when it was initially released, and that's disappointing. I get it that like shotguns were like pretty meta, because you just run in with a free hunter with a Romero and like kind of destroy. But then again, everybody was playing that way. But that's, again, a bit of a separate topic. And so why don't we move on to our next topic here? So more or less our final topic here is going to be talking about events and their frequency and how they've changed the way that people play the game. Ever since 2020, I believe it was in Halloween when they initially had their first Halloween event. It was kind of this like, ooh, what's this kind of new thing? It seems like they're actually starting to lean more into the live service part of the game. Ever since then, we've pretty much had quarterly events. I know it was a little bit more sparse back in those early days, of late 2020 and early 2021. But pretty much like as soon as they started adding them, it was like they started becoming very frequent. You started having these expectations of the battle pass, and they had various different rewards. But now it's been fairly consistent, I would say, probably since the Moon trilogy, I would say, starting with I believe it was Trader's Moon, when they first introduced the Native American skins and those rewards. They've been fairly frequently, fairly regular, and the way that the battle passes have played out have been very similar, obviously with a little bit of tweaks. They had quest lines going on for a little bit before they added Rotjaw, but those have gone away. And but they've been pretty much the same style since then. And the issue with the events are not that they aren't fun. The events certainly are fun. The various themes and skins that we get, albeit with some controversy, whether be around Post Malone and this last event that we just had. They're still fun to play. The issue, right, is that when there is not an event going on, for there's 2 weeks, that there isn't an event, sometimes less than a week, and the events last sometimes almost 3 months, which is a little crazy. Sometimes, I think the longest an event has ever lasted has been like 50 days. I can't remember what that is. Somebody can, correct me down in the comments below. But anytime there isn't an event, the player base drops off. And so, for those of us who are, regular players of the game, it's just like, Jesus Christ, like we're getting like empty lobbies. And it's only when people come back for the events that the player base finally goes back up a little bit, and that's frustrating. I don't know what the total player base is on consoles, but I know on PC right now, I think it's maybe around 6,000 a day, which is not a lot. And when the events start back up, it's in the it's in the 40,000 range, and so like it feels like there's plenty of people playing, and that's a bit of a problem, right? And frankly, right now, I'm part of the problem also because I'm taking largely a break from playing in between the events. I'll definitely, when they drop 2.3, I'll be wanting to pick it up again and kind of see like, okay, what kind of changes have they made? How does it feel? Especially if they add DeSalle back in on that update. They haven't said so, which I'm really, again, curious when they're wanting to add DeSalle back into the game. And then on top of that, like the other wildcard conditions, I feel like when they announced that last Chinese skin for Chinese New Year's, they teased the Inferno wildcard condition coming back again. But again, we'll see. I know the game's director, not the lead designer, but the game's director, who's American or Canadian, I can't remember, he talked about wanting to see Inferno on Mammon's Gulch, so I can imagine that's probably the first wildcard condition that's coming back. But again, we'll see. The biggest thing with the events, though, is that they take away from the objective. They just do. There are so many things to go off and do aside from going to the boss lair. Whether or not you're pledging, at the various carts, or with the last event with Post Malone, they added a whole new compound that was randomized where it could go. Now it had obviously set places where it could go, but it was on the map, right? So you could see exactly where it was going to go, and you're like, oh, I'm just going to go there. I'm going to trap that up, right, and maybe get free kills from traps, and I don't even have to hang out there. People placing bear traps down to the ground, which is ridiculous, and going on fucking off and getting a free kill, or again just like everybody having their fights there, and then like them adding this new AI type, so like people want to fight that because it could drop a trait token, right? Whatever those are called, the trait spurs, and then on top of that, like, oh, that you've got points to spend there on getting new rewards and like getting randomized rewards from the fortune teller, and largely it just took away from going after the boss. In addition to that, not just with Post Malone, but with the other previous events, they've also made it to where there are other ways to get your health bars back at different locations other than the boss lair. And it's frustrating because, again, as somebody who wants to just like play the objective and go and get in and get out with the bounty token, and it seems like Crytek doesn't really care that much about that. They've said before in the past that they want to try and funnel people towards the boss, so PvP can happen there. But now is what happens is that PvP is spread across the game, and it doesn't feel like it's located centrally anywhere. And again, that's why Bounty Clash feels so fresh, even though that's what the game was all about. Bounty Clash was kind of how the game should feel in Bounty Hunt. The reason why I don't play Bounty Clash all that much is because I like the progress of finding where the boss is. I like hunting that down and then having a showdown at the boss lair, and it's frustrating that there are just so many distractions. I mean, there are so many times where I will go and banish the boss and be like, okay, where is everybody? And then I'm heading to extract, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, now people are showing up. Now people are done, spending all their points and like getting the fucking, shredder, that ridiculous thing that Crytek thought would be a good idea to add to the game. That they had to nerf almost immediately, because it was clearly a fucking bad idea to add to the game. There are just too many distractions from playing the objective, and I wish that in later events, because you absolutely know that more events are coming, is that they would do something to funnel people more towards the boss lair. You know, maybe have your upgrade points or ways that you can spend your points, maybe have that only be back in the lobby, right? Okay, you've gotten your event points, and now when you're back in the lobby, you can pledge to this certain troop or to this certain pact, and then get your special trait there back in the lobby instead of having to go to a certain compound. And then again, like having all your rewards available only in the lobby, or maybe at the boss lair, you know, have something there to where like people are purely funneling towards the boss lair for fights. I think that would be ideal. I don't know exactly how they can implement it except from just like, you know, not having those rewards, right, be available in the game at all, which they're not going to do because they've set that expectation now. And yeah, I just think that it's, I don't know, part of the other issue as well is the returning player base and keeping the numbers high. And the issue is that they keep having these events ongoing, and so people set this expectation again, like what I said before, and it distracts from like what actually vanilla hunt is. And it's funny, you know, you see people talk about vanilla hunters like, oh, hunt is boring now, and it's like, dude, this is what hunt was all about. This is what it, you know, used to be. And you know, if you think this is boring, then like, I'm sorry, the events have kind of, you know, clouded your perspective on it, at least in my opinion, you know. But yeah, I would say, you know, maybe we can just move on to sort of our closing thoughts about the game, and we'll finish this up. The closing thoughts here, I think Hunt, you know, Hunt has problems. I don't think that they can't be remedied. Crytek clearly knows when something does or doesn't work. You know, they are receptive to that, believe it or not. You know, with either reverting changes. I mean, they literally said in their recent developer update that they are going to be reversing some changes, and I think that's good. You know, they've heard us and how we feel about Bounty Clash. They know that we are frustrated with stalemates. The fact that they are trying to rotate custom ammo in and out of the game as far as like making it more scarce, I think is a good thing. It's a step in the right direction. I would just like to see events not necessarily slow down in pace, because I don't think they're going to slow events down in pace. You know, we're going to have a bit of a lull right now when they're doing some more measures to kind of help the health of the current game, obviously. But events are going to be coming back with frequency, you know, throughout the rest of 2025. I think they're just going to be hopefully a little bit more thoughtful about how they implement them. And the issue that I see going forward is how they monetize them, because Hunt is obviously hurting for money. They're a small team trying to make a AAA game, right? And so that is going to affect their bottom line and how they monetize Hunt going forward. You know, because again, it is a live service game. You know, all of the Blood Bond packages and all the DLC Hunters does pay for better servers, you know, as cynical as we want to talk about it, and it does pay for more updates down the line. I don't think we're going to be getting any larger celebrity endorsements, but possibly some more trademark endorsements like Ghostface. I don't know, we'll see on that front. Yeah, I would just like to see some more thoughtful implementations of events and funnel people more towards the objective of the game. But what do you guys think? Why don't you guys let me know down in the comments what you think of the video, what you think could improve about Hunt, how long have you been playing, and what would you like to see in the future? What do you want Crytek to focus on? Do you want just events and events and events, or do you want more maps? Do you want new AI? Tell me what you guys think down in the comments below, and we'll see you guys in the next one. All right, thanks for stopping by.